And welcome to the Simpson Show, a program about Connecticut people and compelling issues. Make it a point to drop in every week. 4 years ago, Mike Harrington weighed over 400 pounds. He was obese, unhealthy, and very unhappy. He finally had enough and set off on a journey to healthy living. Eventually, he lost 200 pounds. Today, Harrington weighs 220. He is committed to a healthy lifestyle that includes a consistent meal plan and exercise. He is here today to talk about his journey from fat to fit. Mike Harrington, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good. I saw the old picture that when you came into the studio, I didn't recognize which one. So what a tremendous journey over a 12-month period.
Absolutely.
Right, in 2014. When did you realize that weight was a problem for you?
I think I always kind of knew. But I think the thing that really triggered me was the loss of my father due to his poor health habits. He died of colon and lung cancer, and it scared me to death.
2010, right?
In 2010, very good.
So why that scare you? What about that death kind of woke you up?
I was in the room when he passed away, and I really feel that I saw regret in his eyes that he couldn't change his own health.
What kind of habits? Was there any obesity in the family?
Yes.
There was. Where on the
Well, I don't want to reveal everyone,
okay, but
there is obesity in the family.
Okay.
Yeah, there definitely is.
Okay.
But it was more about poor health habits more than anything.
So that woke you up. So what happens there? How much did you weigh in 2010? Your dad passes. What did you weigh approximately?
I was well over 400 pounds.
Over 400 pounds.
I don't know exactly.
Right. So what happens there?
I made a promise to myself. I said that I wanted to learn something from his poor health habits. I wasn't going to let his death be in vain.
So when you look at habits, what kind of habits do we talk about? Because we're going to get into the whole issue of emotional, physical, sort of unhealthy relationships with food. What habits were the most compelling?
It's really what I've discovered through my journey is what you eat, what kind of physical activity that you get, sleep, stress management, all of those things. I had to really completely retool those things. I realized that. It wasn't just about just losing the weight.
What was the one thing you found that was surprising to you about you and food, about your relationship with food?
Well, and this hasn't changed. I'm a stress eater, and I even from time to time binge eat. And I had to learn to create sort of techniques for myself.
So if we would say stress eater, meaning that when you have stress in your life, you eat.
Absolutely.
Right? Some people smoke a cigarette, some people walk, exercise.
Great point.
You would eat.
That's right.
Okay.
You know, and what's more difficult about something like that is the fact that it's always around you. If I smoked cigarettes or if I drank alcohol, I can not have those things in the house.
But stress was a trigger for you for food.
Absolutely.
And what kind of food would you eat when you were stressed out?
Anything. Probably mostly carbohydrate type things.
And that's where the binge eating also came in. That once you start stress eating, then you're binge eating, and then you're doing that consistently.
Exactly.
Right? So at the end of the day, as you pull the layers back, your issue is more about stress than with food.
That could be a good way to. Right. Exactly.
Am I wrong to say that?
No, you're not, because that was something I had to learn to replace those behaviors, which is why I do some of the things like hiking and some other activities that distract me from going out and just eating all the time. So
you did this self-assessment. You're 400 plus pounds, and you realize there are a lot of things going on emotionally, physically. So where do you start?
It took me a few years to figure it out, obviously, because I said that I started in 2014. But between that time period, 2010, when my father died, and then I did a few times attempts to try to get there. What I realized was it wasn't going to just be something that I could just do like a diet and lose the weight. It had to be a sustainable type of complete life change. I had to commit to it.
So give me one first step.
I had to track everything that I ate.
You had a journal.
So it's interesting. Initially, at one point, I used to keep a written journal. Now, today, we have apps to do
technology.
Right.
Right.
And so I used a fitness and food tracking app.
Now, why is that so important? You hear a lot of people say keep a journal.
Right.
And I'm guessing it holds you accountable. Why is that so powerful?
That's exactly right. And and another thing is it made me aware of what I was eating. I think when I was that big, I was just putting food into my mouth. When you keep track of it, you learn things about nutrition. You learn things like NyQuil has 90 calories.
Oh, really? But I bet you also can time. I'm assuming you put it in what time you're eating, what you're eating, and possibly see maybe a trend on when you sort of binge. Did you find that? Or did you look at your times and say, okay, around 3 o'clock, I end up having
Nighttime is a big one.
Nighttime, big problem.
Nighttime's been a big
A lot of folks emphasize that. They eat late night and they can have a lot of food late.
Middle of the night for me.
Right. Middle of the night, really wake up in the middle of the night.
Middle of the night.
So I want to do one thing too to show people what we're talking about. When you're 400 pounds, this is what you used to be like. This is maybe you can stand up and show people how, this is what you were.
These are size 55 pants, and I think at some point we'll show a picture of me wearing them.
Yeah, we have some pictures here.
Right.
We have some pictures here where you're bigger, so I'm sure we will show some of those. But there's a So, and we have also a belt. What we can do is just give people an idea what that's like.
Yeah, size 60 belt.
Stretch one to the other.
We'll probably go across the room.
So that was your belt.
That was my belt.
And you said that was tight at some times for you.
Yeah.
So let's get back now. So you start charting this journal, right? And what do you find? How does that begin to become a elixir for you?
Well, the first several months, I didn't really see much of a change in my physical appearance. Probably the first 3-4 months. But it was teaching me to stay on a routine. And I think that was probably more important than the weight loss, was establishing a routine of eating at certain times, tracking what I was eating, and getting some physical activity.
Okay, so let's go back to track with the food. What kind of things were you seeing? 'Cause that journal obviously was very powerful. So what things were you seeing that were clear red flags, and what did you try to replace those things with?
Things like sugary foods, I really cut back on that.
Like what? Cookies? Give me an idea.
Cookies, sugar, and coffee.
Right.
Things like that I really needed to cut back. So eventually I did things like weaned myself from drinking coffee with lots of cream and maybe 6 sugars.
Right.
To maybe a couple less sugars, and then just slowly over time to drinking it black.
All right, but all due respect, though, you don't get to be 400 pounds just on coffee and tea, right?
Absolutely.
So what else did you see on there? Give me an idea.
It's a good example.
When you binged at night, what kind of things were you doing?
It was really volume more than anything.
Give folks some example here.
Ice cream.
Potato chips, Doritos, give us an idea.
My thing maybe is ice cream. Maybe it's things like the breads, pastas, those types of things. Lots of those.
So, do you have any counseling when you're going through this sort of this introspection, looking what you're eating, replacing it?
Right.
Are you getting counseling, someone to help you with this, saying, Mike, you know what, why don't you try this? Or is it more or less you're figuring it out on your own?
I was figuring it out on my own. I do have some background in it. I grew up in a family where I did have some exposure to understanding nutrition a little bit. It's just doing it yourself is a whole other thing. I did at times. I had joined weight loss groups, so I had learned some of the techniques. And
were they helpful?
They were, but to be honest with you, the group itself didn't have their the best habits themselves. So although I lost interest as well because it wasn't keeping my interest in it. Yeah.
So when you have the issue of being overweight, about 30 seconds, and we'll carry a little bit of time over. But final question for this segment: when you're big like that, right? There's the physical weight, and then the emotional weight.
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself emotionally that you were able to change?
Well, here's the thing that's interesting. I was stressed out and I was anxious and I was self-hating, not because of the weight itself. The weight was a symptom of those things that I felt about myself, probably from the past with childhood trauma. And because of that, I didn't take care of myself.
Okay, so this was childhood trauma. At the root of the stress was some issues, childhood trauma,
Absolutely.
that you had to reconcile.
Yes.
All right, we're going to hold that thought right there, come back and talk about some of that trauma as best we can, and then the transformation of Mike Harrington, who lost 200 pounds a few years back, and he is not able to keep it off. We'll show you how he did that. We'll also show you the reaction from his mother when she first saw the results of her son's weight loss program. You don't want to miss it. Remember, catch our show on your own time online at fox61.com/Stan. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter too. Don't go away.